Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order at 6:09 on November 24th. It's with great respect and humility that we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. I would also like to acknowledge that we serve within the territories of the Snuneymuxw and Staminas First Nations, and we work alongside our urban Indigenous partners at Tilikum-Leelam and Mid-Island Métis Nation. We have no transfer of items from the open meeting agenda, or pardon me, to the open meeting agenda. We do have an addition this evening under 13.3, fuel conservation and school sports. Were there any other additions, deletions, or change in order to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I will ask, is there consensus on the agenda? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one opposed, the agenda carries. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. That the minutes from the regular board meeting held October 27th, 2021 be adopted. Is there a mover? Greg has moved the motion and Elaine has seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to carrying the minutes? With no objection, the motion carries. It moves us on to section 8 of our agenda this evening, the section 72.3 report, 8.1, that the section 72.3 report from the closed board meeting on October 27th, 2021 be received. Do I have a mover? Moved by Jessica and seconded by Stephanie. Thank you. Any objection to the motion? With no objection, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Announcements and reminders. The Board of Education will be holding their annual general meeting on December 1st, 2021 at a special meeting at 5 p.m. The Education Committee meeting will commence at 6 p.m. on the same date, December 1st. Our Business Committee meeting, it will be held on December 8th, with the regular Board of Education meeting being held December 15th. The last day of school before winter break is December 17th. And just before I move into the next item on our agenda, I just wanted to acknowledge the significant impacts of the last 8 days that, based on climate, weather, there are so many things going on in our province. And it's been really difficult for some of our colleagues and school families across the province who have been drastically affected by weather, roads, flooding. Some of the stories about how communities are coming together are significantly moving, and I just would like to express on behalf of our board to the rest of the province, especially those that are impacted by these significant events, our best wishes and solidarity with them, and hope that they're finding themselves well and cared for in the meantime as they move through that process. So with that, I will move us into our presentation stage of our agenda. And I would like to welcome Garrett Chance this evening, who's going to give us a presentation on Special Olympics British Columbia. Thanks for joining us, Garrett.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I'll just share my screen.
Thanks.
And then can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So yeah, I'm here with Special Olympics and we just wanted to talk about what Special Olympics is and how we can get programs started in schools that we offer. So our mission with Special Olympics is dedicated to enriching the lives of individuals with intellectual disabilities through sport. And we offer a worldwide we offer programs year long through different sports, 18 sports, and different healthy, active, and events, and like going to fitness clubs and stuff like that. And then our values are inclusion, diversity, empowerment, respect, and excellence. So these are some fast, fun facts about Special Olympics. We were established in 1980. Internationally, we were established in 1968. In SOBC, we have over 4,500 athletes. The age range comes from 2 to 91. And then we also are based we need a lot of support with our volunteers. So we have over 4,000 volunteers, and then we have 55 programs across BC. And then many of our athletes are involved in Special Olympics throughout their lives. So yeah, these are just some examples of our cute little guy on the right there. Yeah, so that's probably part of our active start and fundamentals programs. Those age ranges are from 2 to 11. And then we also have school sport programs that I'll be mostly talking about today. So some high school sport programs that we offer are 3-on-3 basketball, track and field, and 3-on-3 soccer. And we have lesson plans and training tips that we can provide schools and to the teachers that are easy to implement. And as of a few weeks ago, we've talked to a school in Campbell River and Comox, and then also Belena Secondary. And then we're trying to plan a 3-on-3 tournament with all those schools to come together for a unified sport. And they plan to do it in late April, which sounds fantastic. So if you have or interested or want to know more about it, please let me know, and I'll be happy to help you. And then for also school sport activities, yeah, so this was about a few years ago in 2019. This is from a school in the Comox, I believe. This is what happened. We had a nice, successful 3-on-3 basketball tournament with students and students without intellectual disabilities. And then for the cost, there's not much cost for the school. There's just t-shirts or uniforms if you want it, and then sometimes transportation, but we cover all the other costs that come with competition. So if that's a barrier, we can definitely talk about that. And these are just some of the overview sports and programs we offer. So we offer 8 winter sports, 10 summer sports, and then these are some of the community youth programs, Active Start, which are 2 to 6, fundamentals 7 to 11 years old, and then Sports Start are usually from 12 to 18. And then Club Fit is just general fitness in your community that we also offer to youth and adults. And then this is the program that we created this year. There's a curriculum that has easy lesson plans that you can implement with students and students without intellectual disabilities working together. And there's 4 main initiatives in that program: is health, fitness, sport, and community. And the benefits include positive interactions, positive attitudes, connections for all participating students to work together in a positive and inclusive environment. Then athlete benefits of SOBC programs. They improve cognitive skills, physical skills, and also social skills. And as of right now, due to COVID, it was definitely tough on the athletes. So we offered a lot of virtual programs, but now that sports and programs are starting up in BC, we've also had a lot of good responses for that, and they're excited to come back and see all their friends and coaches and stuff like that. And then for caregiver benefits, vehicle for networking with other families, long-term child participation in sport, introduction to SOBC family, resources and support throughout their time here, and also education in fitness and nutrition for themselves, and also their children or their person they're caregiving for. So some more initiatives we offer in the school and community are Spread the Word, Try Days, and Health. So Spread the Word inclusion is a youth initiative that promotes eliminating the R word from everyone's vocabulary and gives students a chance to sign the pledge and learn more about Special Olympics and how people interact with intellectual disabilities. Days is also can be in schools. It's also just like a fun day for sports and health and fitness. So there's different stations that can be run from SOBC staff, and volunteers, and then they just come in, run a few sports stations. It can be a half day or a full day program based on the school needs or wants or necessities. And then this is some of the healthy living and wellness programs we offer. So healthy athlete screenings, year-round health support and club fitness programs, program and functional testing, and fitness, health, fitness, and nutritional resources on our website. So some of the healthy athlete screenings we can provide are fit feet, fun fitness, health promotion, healthy hearing, vision care, special smiles for dentistry, and strong minds for mental wellness. So if you have more questions about that, you can contact Steph or I. And then we also have virtual tools and resources. We have account load, a lot of resources on our website that can talk about many things about health, fitness, nutrition, anything you want about even, all the tips you need to get better and stronger mentally and physically. And then, these are some of our, these are some of the people you can contact. You can contact Amy or I if you have any more questions about the programs we offer.
Great, thanks, Garrett. I'm incredibly impressed at the number of programs and opportunities, different ways that you support athletes. It's quite incredible, really. So at this point, I would usually open it up to trustees to see if they have any questions for you. I know from my perspective, I want to share my thanks again and just suggest that our staff now have your presentation so they can distribute that out to their schools, and that provides an access point for programs. And I have a question for you from Jessica.
Hi, Garrett. Hi. You don't need to sell me on any aspect of these programs because I participated in when I was in high school myself, and really as a volunteer, and I really firmly believe in the value of Special Olympics and all the services. So thank you for your work. I feel like I missed something because that you might have touched on this, or maybe I just need to learn a little bit more. How do these programs occur in schools? What kind of has to occur? What kind of do you need a teacher who's interested, or kind of tell me, how does this actually look in schools?
Yeah, it really depends on the program you're interested in. For Try Days, it's mostly are the staff or volunteers, and then maybe some teachers if they have the capability to do it. For the really teacher-focused one is the Inclusive Champion Schools program that we created. We all have the lesson plans and educational equipment, activities and equipment ready for you. I can send that information along to Karen after the meeting, and they can disperse it out. But there's 4 main initiatives within that program. It's health, fitness, community, and sports. So some of the activities they would include are like spread the word. So that would be a community initiative, and then sport would be like a basketball tournament, and then health would be nutritional education, and then fitness would just be almost like a quick workout with students with intellectual disabilities. So hopefully that answered some of your questions.
It did, and thank you. I mean, Special Olympics sporting events are so much fun, and what great fun to watch. So especially this basketball tournament sounds really exciting. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that, what are the possibilities. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Yeah, thank you for the questions as well.
Great, thanks, Jessica. Do we have any other questions for Garrett this evening? So I don't see any more questions coming up in my chat. So what I'll do is I will ask you to please forward that information to Karen so that our superintendent and deputy superintendent can get that out to schools, and hopefully we can see some participation in the tournament that you've got coming up.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, thank you for your time, everybody, and have a great night.
Absolutely, you as well. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, so we will be moving into our correspondence section of the agenda now. Let's see. So what I have is 11.1. And the first topic of correspondence, it's a multitude of letters that have come in regarding a vaccine mandate. And so the proposed motion in your agenda this evening is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence to the board chair for response. Is there a mover? It's been moved by Elaine and seconded by Jessica. Is there any discussion on that motion? So I'm not seeing any, so I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? If no one opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 11.2, notice of vaccine liability. The proposed motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the notice of vaccine liability to the board chair for response. Do I have a mover? Moved by Chantel and a second by Tanya. Any discussion on that motion? With no discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? With no one opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 11.3, we have 3 letters regarding the vaccine mandate that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the above correspondence from S. Myron, K. Capaduca, and V. Jones to staff for response. Is there a mover? It's moved by Bill and seconded by Tanya. Any discussion on the motion? With no motion, or pardon me, with no discussion, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And so that takes us to 11.4, vaccine notice of liability. That the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the vaccine notice of liability from J. Bartlett, K. Stant, and S. Myron to staff for response. Is there a mover? It's been moved by Chantel and seconded by Tanya. And so, is there any discussion on this motion? With no discussion on the motion, I'll call the question. Is there any objection? With no objections, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Stephanie?
Thank you. So I have some concerns with some of this correspondence sitting, unfiltered on our website and in our, in our agendas and minutes. In particular, there's a lot of information presented in here that makes a lot of statements about vaccines, about COVID, about transmissibility, about the effectiveness of vaccines. I don't know, all sorts of, information that's presented in a way that may, it hasn't been fact checked. I don't know if it's true. Some of it is certainly presented like it's true. And I'm just wondering, it's particularly sort of the 11.3, 11.4 stuff. I'm just wondering if there's a possibility for us to put sort of a like a disclaimer page at the start of the vaccine mandate information that says that it's not fact checked, it's not representative of the views of SD68. I think we have a responsibility as an education institution to make sure that any information that sits and is housed on our website is fact checked. And I'm not entirely sure that some of this stuff is. In fact, I know it's not true. So I don't know if staff has an opinion of that or if I need to move a motion, and if so, I'm willing to do that. But I have concerns about this information sitting unchecked on our website.
Okay, thank you. So Scott, our superintendent, I would ask you to maybe come on and advise us if a motion is necessary in order for us to have a disclaimer around where we post these letters and responses.
Oh, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Sort of a new one to me. I wonder if I could invite Secretary Treasurer Walsh to weigh in on this as well.
Thank you. Mark?
Sure. If the board was desiring to put that on COVID-related information, I would recommend a motion in the circumstances rather than staff determining that. And if a motion was to come on that front, I would also recommend that it be limited to the issue at hand, because of course we get lots of correspondence, and I'd be concerned about maybe that blanket statement being on there. And what I would also add is that if the board did want to go and debate a motion, we will be looking at our governance procedures as well. So the larger point could be you could have your solution for a short term, and then the larger point could be debated amongst the policy work that's getting done and then being shared with the public for public consultation as well.
Okay, thank you for that advice. So I think based on that advice, Trustee Higginson, I would ask that you move a motion to that effect.
Okay, I'll just move a motion that a disclaimer page appear between pages 71 and 228, that the information has not been fact checked or is representative of the views of School District 68.
Okay, and I see that that motion has been seconded by Tanya. So let's make my notes here. Did you want to speak further to the reasoning behind this, to the motion?
No, yes, thank you. I have seen some other instances across the province where some information that people are presenting then gets taken out of context, utilized in other areas, and because it's coming off of a, an institutional or government website, it's considered to be fact. So I think it's important for us to make sure that people know that we haven't fact checked this. I'm not, and that perhaps a lot of it doesn't represent our views. So that I'm just trying to make sure that things don't get misinterpreted as an educational institution.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this motion? I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll call the question on the motion. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? With no opposition, the motion carries. Thank you. Good note here. That moves us on to 11.5 in our agenda this evening. Letter regarding travel restrictions, with a motion recommended that the Board of Education of School District number 68 Nanaimo Ladysmith refer the above correspondence from Councillor Wilson, I hope I say this correctly, K. Kokinen and J. Bruckman to staff for response. Is there a mover? Moved by Jessica and seconded by Greg. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, I'll ask if there's anyone opposed to the motion. With no one opposed to the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That moves us into section 12 of our agenda this evening for committee reports. Go ahead, Mark.
Madam Chair, just to take one moment of indulgence, if that is okay, and I just wanted to, again, I guess for the sake of the record, the board is seeing legal, quasi-legal documents with respect to suggesting that the board would be at some liability. And you'll notice that normally we would have such an issue brought in the closed session. Given there's zero legal basis for the suggestion of liability against the board, its directors, or otherwise, and including the fact that under the School Act, individuals are prevented to be named in these lawsuits, except for in very specific circumstances, it was appropriate to put on the public agenda, just because, again, the board is at zero legal risk with respect to the information that was provided.
Great, thank you very much. I think that clarification is important. So that'll move us into our business committee report. So I'll invite Trustee Keller to give us a couple of motions this evening.
Thank you, Chair. So item 12.1, we have two motions this evening. The first one reads as follows, that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, approve the terms of reference for the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second on that motion? Seconded by Stephanie. Thank you. Did you want to speak to the motion, Greg?
I would actually offer that over to you, Chair, if you like, since you were involved in that.
Sure, thanks. So it was a really great piece of work to come together and see the startup of this new committee that's been driven by the board's long range facilities plan. And I think it provides a depth of opportunity for input by various partner groups in the organization, as well as at times external community partners that'll also be involved within the larger committee and then a subcommittee itself. And so these terms of reference will prove to provide us with some guidance about how we'll go about doing our business and conducting ourselves in a way that's respectful, inclusive of, differing views, and provide us with the opportunity of transparency in how we come about making recommendations to the board, and then ultimately we'll be able to use those terms of reference to guide that work so that the committee's making good recommendations to the Board of Education. So with consensus, I am happy to say from the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee, we've brought these forward and hope that we see their approval this evening officially. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Is there any opposition to the motion? With no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Greg.
Thanks. So the second business committee motion reads as follows, that the business committee recommends that the Board of Education of School District number 68, Nanaimo Ladysmith, refer the correspondence from Mayor Aaron Stone, Town of Ladysmith, to the chair for a response following further consultation with the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee.
Thank you. So that's been moved by Greg and seconded by Jessica. Did you want to speak to that, Greg?
Sure. Just briefly, I'll just say that I'm pleased that we received this referral from Mayor Stone, and I'm also pleased that we now have a committee that's been established to review referrals on these types of matters, and I'm looking forward to supporting the work. So I will be supporting the motion.
Great, thank you. Did anyone else want to speak to the motion? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? With no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Greg, for the report from the Business Committee. We don't have anything from the Education Committee this month, which takes us into our senior staff reports. 13.1, Mark Walsh, Secretary Treasurer, regarding the amendment of capital bylaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this evening, I'm presenting a recommended motion to amend our capital bylaw for 21-22. And I can say what excellent, great news this amendment is. So essentially what the board is being asked to approve is the amendment to change our bylaw to reflect two additional amounts of money. So the board, I believe every time we presented, has said shake those bushes and talk to our partners about whether we're able to enhance projects that we're already looking at pursuing. And in this case, the board, out of surplus dollars in the previous September, did set aside funds for environmental upgrades, and we reported to the board that our intention is to use them at Cedar. To replace some HVAC work there. We called the ministry and we said, here's an opportunity. We have 400,000, but we could do even better with assistance from you. And they were able to assist us with an additional $400,000 at Cedar. So an enormous impact from a GHG perspective. So you'll see now we're projecting that the Cedar project with the Ministry of Education money, assuming the board approves tonight, as well as the board allocated money from surplus, will reduce the GHG emissions of the district in one project by 2.7%. And so that is very significant. And when this project comes to fruition, because we do have some supply chain issues, unfortunately, we've ordered the materials already. But when it comes to fruition, combine that with some of the other projects, and we're going to get very close to meeting the board's ambitious goal, at least for a year. The other item is electric buses. So we as a district in our long range facilities plan, the board committed to electrifying our bus infrastructure, and to that end, the ministry again is being supportive of districts to do that. Our district again has put forward dollars to be able to support GHG reduction across the board and electrification. And so they've again given us additional money to support the infrastructure. We're not completely sure if the 60,000 will go towards the buses or the actual infrastructure. It depends really on what cost needs to go out first. But again, you'll see a large reduction in GHG emissions. And what I would say is, could we only imagine during this gas concern that we have right now, had we had a fully electric fleet? So we're lucky to have two more on the way, and we're going to keep on going. So really, really great news, and meeting some goals of the board in the long range facilities plan. So motion, happy to answer questions, but the motion is there.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mark, or would we like to, is there someone that would be interested to move? Jessica, go ahead.
Cam's working. Is everything working? Or am I frozen? Oh, there I am. Hi. I have a comment and then I want to move the motion, which I'm sure everybody knows that I am thrilled about. That we have been able to advocate for additional funds for a project that is going to reduce our GHG emissions by 2.7% in one project is mind-blowing. That is amazing. The fact that you just told us that we are close to meeting our target, our annual target set by the board, because of the projects that staff have been able to pursue and advocate and fulfill. These are science-based targets that reflected the previous IPCC report that this board asked our staff to do, and staff were pretty intimidated by this because it was no small task. And let's face it, no government in North America has yet to meet these targets. And so I cannot commend staff enough. I am thrilled. I am so impressed. If only the rest of our governments and bureaucrats were as dedicated and effective as the staff at SD68, we perhaps would be well along our way to meeting, climate change needs and a sufficient climate action plan. So I can't, I will jump up and down and do lots of exciting things, but thank you from the bottom of my heart for my children's future. I think everyone's looking at what's happening across our province right now and realizing the severity of climate change. And look at our school district. What we are doing to address climate change locally is phenomenal and probably beats definitely all North American governments, because this is actual action, but quite possibly, the majority of governments across the world. So thank you. I would like to move the motion. Yes.
We're gonna let Mark respond, and then we'll move the motion. Go ahead, Mark.
I thank you. I can't speak for other governments who I'm sure are doing as much as they can, but I do, again, want to recognize that the Ministry of Education is taking climate change incredibly serious, and they came to meet us, and they saw a project that they can support as well. So it's our joint success, to be very clear.
And that is perfectly fair, but I still want to thank our staff for chasing it down. So yes, you're right. Credit where credit is due. Thank you, Ministry of Education, and I assume Treasury for funding it. Very important, but still, good job, SD68. Okay.
Okay.
May I?
Of course you may.
Okay. That the Board of Education approve the Secretary Treasurer's amendment to Capital Bylaw number 2021-22. CPSD 68-01 to read capital bylaw number, capital bylaw number 2021-22 CPSD 68-02, reflecting the Ministry of Education's amendment to the annual programs funding agreement to supplement our electric buses purchase and additional funds for an emergent project at Cedar Secondary through CNCP.
Thank you. Trustee Higginson, excuse me, Stephanie has seconded your motion. Would you like to motivate?
Did I just not?
I think you might have done it backwards, however, specific to the motion. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Okay.
Thank you to the board, actually. Thank you, board. We had a big goal, and this is a major achievement, and I'm really happy that we were willing to do this.
Great. Thanks. Greg?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that Trustee Stanley did a fantastic job motivating this motion. I support very strongly the work that this motion proposes, and I'd like to also echo what Mark had said, and just recognizing how important it is for our board and our staff to work closely with the ministry to recognize the potential for saving greenhouse gas emissions through energy efficiency projects throughout the district. As everyone's aware, our facilities are aging, and then there probably is a lot more potential that we can still realize, and I'm looking forward to working with the board and the ministry to try and encourage more of this work in the future. And also I feel perhaps as we move forward with the environmental committee and the long range facilities planning committee, these types of projects will gain additional steam as we start to identify where we're going to have the biggest potential gains throughout the district. So again, just great work, and I fully support the motion. So thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Thank you. Just because we have such a reason to celebrate, I want to dogpile on the good news train. And really, you know, I think our staff often faces a lot of criticism for things that aren't their fault. And so I really want to say thank you to them for the incredible work that they did. And I acknowledge the Secretary Treasurer gave props to the ministry as well, and to thank them as well. But also, you know, I think this is one of those really good news stories about a board and a staff working together. The board had the courage to be bold, and the staff took the reins. And I really appreciate the impact that this is going to have. I know this is one project, it's significant, but one step, sorry, that this is going to have not just sort of on these one particular projects, but, you know, the lowering of these emissions on the future students in our district and our community. This is really good for our community as well. So just another, you know, I want to be on the celebration train. We don't have lots of celebration moments these days, so let's just keep this one going. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak to the motion? I don't have anyone else on the speakers list other than to be enthusiastic. So I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? With no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for your report this evening. It takes us to 13.2. Scott Saywell, Superintendent. He's going to share with us completion rates.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'll ask trustees to turn to page 252 of their agenda. And so the intent of this evening was to share with trustees the 6-year completion rates that were recently approved for distribution by the Ministry of Education. The plan is to just go through it quickly. Perhaps there'll be some questions, to celebrate briefly, and then share that we will be diving a little more deeply into the data. It's in the board work plan, and thought it would be appropriate at an upcoming education committee meeting where we can engage our partners in a conversation, and we can have the entire learning services team supporting this information as well. So let's just have a quick look on page 252. You'll see on the left-hand side of that first column, I'm not going to speak to, you might have some questions about the eligible grade 12 graduation rates and the first-time grade 12 graduation rate. But this evening, I'm going to go through the 6-year completion rate, which is the standard rate that all districts is really, in a way, their largest measure of success. So you see at the top our all student rate, which is 78.8% in 2020, 2021. It has steadily climbed from 2016, 2017 from 72.4%. Now, what that rate has is everyone in the school district, and that includes our international students, many of which don't come here to graduate and many of which do not graduate. So the next row there is our resident graduation rate, which is our key rate, which is, as you can see, in 2016-17 was 77.7%, and 2020-21, our highest rate in the history of Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools, 88.7%, up from 83.8% last year. Below that, you see the female and the male rates. The 5-year increase in both of those rates is really astounding. If you're a female in Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools, you have a 91% chance of graduating. And if you're a male, just about 87% chance of graduating. The Indigenous rate is below that. You see in 2016, our rate was 52.1. In 2020, 2021, our 6-year graduation rate for Indigenous students is 80.3%. Similarly, really amazing increases in ELL rates, English language learners. 2016, 61.4% to 2020, 2021, steady incline to 82.5%. And finally, our diverse needs categories, 2016-17, 50.6%, and in 2020, 2021, 64.2%. Lots of room for improvement in that rate, but overall, every single measure in graduation rates is the highest we've ever seen in Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools. So, you know, I hope when trustees see this information, when I see this information, I start to ask myself some questions about how we increased so dramatically in the last couple of years during a global pandemic. I wonder last year, I'm just going to wonder a few things and then I'll leave questions for trustees if they have any. But I wonder about the quarter system last year, what effect that had on student success. I wonder about how outreach programs that we instigated last year in a big way because of the pandemic, I wonder how they contribute to student success. Just a couple off the top of my head, we've had a pretty good discussion in the Learning Services Department about why we've improved so much. Adult grad rates, Dogwood grad rates can be another key to this. But happy to share these grad rates this evening, and I'm open to a few questions if you have any.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to start us off this evening. I've had a little bit of time to digest this information. I'm really grateful that I've had that time. And I'm just going to throw a little bit of math in there. I think that we're going to see a lot of trustees that have questions, and I can't wait to the bigger conversation when we dive a little bit deeper into teasing out some of that information about what you're wondering and perhaps what other trustees are wondering and having that deeper conversation. But for the moment, I think what I'd like to highlight, or what stands out to me the most, is that in 2016 and 2017, there was a 25% gap, or there was a 25% gap between Indigenous grad rates and our resident grad rates. And so our goal has been for so long to reach parity. And while we're not there yet, it's now almost 8.5%. And that is not insignificant. You want to talk good news, we're getting there, and it's such a moment to pause and consider that, you know, if you listen to the histories from some of our aunties and uncles about what school was like in Nanaimo Ladysmith Public Schools in the 1970s, and it didn't look like this, and to think about what it looks like in 2021, and to recognize that we have heard and listened and focused to make these big jumps is significant. And I look forward to our conversations that we're going to have in the future about, you know, the why and the how. But for the moment, I'm just going to share my really extreme and deep gratitude for the fact that not once have you and the school district team lost focus of that goal. So the work's been done by you, and I deeply appreciate the work that's gone into that. Tanya?
Thank you, Chair. I'm also going to echo some of what you said. I probably have questions and things I'd like to dig into deeper, but tonight I will save that. We will do that when we have it on the wider agenda. Tonight is just tonight to say good work to all of our team. And I'm including parents who would have worked in partnership with you to support those kids and the students. These are good results. We do have more work to do, of course, but we have a lot to be proud of, and we should just take a moment to celebrate how far we've come so that we can then do the work to figure out how to build on it. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. Stephanie?
Thank you. I'm going to keep the good news train rolling this night, because wow, what a great way to finish a really, really difficult couple of days, is to talk about this amazing accomplishment. And so I really also want to express my, deep gratitude to our staff for their perseverance. I think, though, also this is a story about long-term vision as well, and a story about boards and staffs working well together. I remember the board in 2011, the 2011-14 board starting to invest in focus schools. And I remember the 2014 and 18 board looking at the information from those focus schools brought to us by staff saying, look at how successful this is, and making some very, very difficult and controversial decisions to realign our finances so that we could implement more focus schools. And this board continuing to support that, and all of that done because we worked very closely together with students at the center of the decision, supporting a strategic plan. So I'm just, sometimes people wonder what all this process is and why aren't you all yelling at each other more? This shows why we're not. And it also shows the importance of patience when you're making these investments. I have no doubt that what it takes to make a student successful at graduation, not just to get that dogwood, but also to go beyond and be successful, is actually that the whole time they were in school, they were being supported and learning throughout it. And I think that's why those focus schools are so important, because they give vulnerable and priority learners a strong foundation to move all the way through school successfully. And so I do just really want to raise my hands in gratitude to everyone for working together on this. And I do, my questions actually will be when we have a discussion. I'm really hoping that we can tease out that adult dogwood information that you were talking about, specifically the adult dogwood rates in comparison to those 3 identified priority learner groups in the framework for enhancing student learning: Indigenous learners, children and youth in care, and diverse learners, so that we can ensure that our use of adult dogwood isn't something that is helping buffer things that we also need to pay attention to. Because the focus school conversation, I know I keep going back to it, but I really think that that's kind of a foundation. These kids that are graduating now were the recipients of those, and our district's ability to stay focused on something that needed some patience to show its work. And there's a lot of other factors that went into it, but it's one example. So when we do see it, my question actually is just that when we do dig into it, I'd like sort of a separate look at our adult dogwood rate so that we can pay attention to that and make sure that we're also, doing the right thing by those learners. But tonight is about good news. I want to congratulate our superintendent. I remember during your interview, you said your big, hairy, audacious goal was parity, and we are so much closer. So thank you for being a dog with a bone on that. And I'm really proud of us all. I hope that there's a press release going out with this information. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, it's not the first time I've cried over this one. I can admit that. It's fine. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? That's it. Well, I guess I get to close with another thank you on that topic. It's incredible and appreciated. And so with that, we'll move into our next topic on the agenda. 13.3, we will hear from Scott around fuel conservation and sports. There's a verbal update for the board this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Through you again, Madam Chair. So let me start by saying that board chairs, including you and trustees, superintendents, and secretary treasurers from around the province had an online meeting earlier today with Minister of Education Jennifer Whiteside, who shared some information concerning the devastation that is happening around the province due to floods and mudslides. And so I wanted to just take a little opportunity this evening to share some of that information with you as well. So as you've seen on the news and in social media, well, many places in BC were hit pretty hard. Places like Abbotsford and Merritt and Princeton and other outlying communities in that area were hit extremely hard. And they're all dealing with flooding. Of course, you've seen it on the news, loss of homes and farms and road closures. We've seen thousands of chickens and cattle die, loss of human life as well. Devastating. Water contamination, all manner of supply chain issues, mental health issues, and a forecast that has nothing but rain in it. Continue to be concerns for all of us, but particularly in those communities. We heard today that in SD 58, Nicholas Similkameen, which is the Princeton Merritt area, schools have been closed now for 8 days. 50% of all the schools in SD 58 are underwater. In SD 34, Abbotsford, where there's also major flooding, of course, due to the Sumas River breaching its dike. Immense flooding of homes and farms again. Thousands of students have to work online because teachers actually can't get to the school where they teach because of flooding. Staff who live in Chilliwack but work in Abbotsford are being bused to work, and in some cases it's taking up to 3.5 hours one way. I wanted to share that information this evening because, well, once again, we can be thankful that we're living on Vancouver Island right now, where we weren't quite hit with that manner of devastation, but also to think of our colleagues and friends and family members in other parts of BC who need our support. On to the update for fuel restrictions. Railways, roadways throughout the province, as well as the Trans Mountain Pipeline, are all in a poor state of repair. And that's put many places in BC on a severe fuel shortage. And hence the restrictions that we see in Nanaimo, Ladysmith public schools area, where we're limited to consumption of 30 liters for every a visit at a gas station. BC superintendents attended a meeting last Sunday morning with Deputy Minister of Education Scott MacDonald. In that meeting, Deputy Minister MacDonald directed all affected districts to conserve fuel by asking any district employee who can work from home to do so, convert all face-to-face meetings to online meetings, ask everyone who can either carpool or take public transit. I can tell you that Secretary Treasurer Walsh and Deputy Superintendent Tim Davey both came in via transit this morning and will go home the same way. And cancel all essential travel at this time, including field trips and sporting activities. So the reason we did this was to conserve fuel, to maintain the needed fuel supply for essential workers like RCMP, ambulance, fire, and school buses are on that list as well. So for our part, the vast majority of district administrative staff that work at the center here are all working at home. Island Connect Ed staff, our distributed learning school, for the most part are working at home. Career Technical Center staff are also working at home. All of our face-to-face meetings are now online. We canceled all field trips as well as any games and tournaments that we were hosting or attending, including provincial level tournaments. Now, we were hoping that other districts were doing the same, and you know, this was a moving target over the last few days, and we found out that, well, districts were canceling many things. Other districts were not doing the same as it related to provincial tournaments. So once we discovered that, frankly, late last night and early this morning, we too decided to give our teams the green light and reschedule and go to those provincial tournaments. So what that means for us is that we have 3 teams from our district that will now be attending provincial tournaments. So on Saturday, November 27th, junior varsity football will be played at BC Place between John Barsby and Robert Bateman Secondary Schools. Go Dogs! November 25th through to the 27th, NDSS AAA Boys Soccer is playing in Delta. And November 26th to the 27th, NDSS Boys Lacrosse will attend the Claremont tournament in Saanich. And they're going to that tournament. Well, it's not a provincial tournament. It is the biggest tournament this year, and over 30 teams there are all still attending from lots of teams from the States, and lots of college recruiters will be at that tournament. So a big thank you to Barsby football coach Rob Stevenson, NDSS Soccer Academy and coach and former Nanaimo United soccer teammate of mine, Coach Gunnar Meyer, and NDSS lacrosse coach and co-coach of mine. We coached girls soccer not so long ago. Joel Smith will all be taking their team on the road this weekend. Finally, I would just like to say, if you'd like to help to support the BC relief, there's a few ways to do it. You can Google it online, but the Red Cross is taking donations. On the province of BC website, you can find places that will take donations. United for BC, the United for BC Flood Response Fund, the United Way, find them online. They're all taking donations. So funds go towards addressing important needs like housing, food assistance, trauma, and mental health support. With that, I'll answer any questions that trustees may have.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Before we go to questions, I do want to add a little bit to what you've shared. And I think often boards of education should pause in moments such as this to share with the public that it's important to remember that we co-govern the education system, the public education system in British Columbia with the Ministry of Education. And so oftentimes, while it may appear that boards are arbitrarily making decisions, sometimes we are making decisions at the behest of our co-governance partner, the Ministry of Education, and we do respect that co-governance relationship, and it means that sometimes we take their direction and we have to enact it. Now, we do have that ability to make local decisions that are best for our community, and in this case, I believe that that's what the superintendent has done. We, I commend you, the ethical responsibility you feel to support, the request around fuel conservation. It is significant. These measures weren't taken lightly by either the provincial government or the recommendations by the ministry to boards of education across the areas that are affected. And that ethical responsibility had us making some tough decisions. And while we have heard locally from our community members and we've made some adjusted responses, I think that's appropriate. But I also think that this is an opportunity for us to highlight as a board that it's important for members of the public to understand that not all decisions are just your Board of Education. We share responsibility as leaders in the community and in co-governing the system with the ministry. So, Scott, I commend you on the work that you've done, on the work of our team, especially Assistant Superintendent Belcombe. I know he's done a lot of work with the sporting teams and principals, and also to the principals. These are not easy decisions that have happened on varying levels, and they're doing a really good job communicating out the urgency around this piece. And I do want to remind people that these are short-term measures while we continue to respond to the crisis that's happening around us. I think we're fortunate enough that maybe it doesn't feel as much like a crisis to us, but it certainly does feel like a crisis to those that are in other areas of the province. And so with that, I will go over to trustees for comments and questions. Tanya?
Thank you. Oh, I'm mute. Thank you. Thank you. I agree with everything you said, Chair. That was excellent. I just want to say thank you, Mr. Saywell. Scott, I really, really appreciate the way you handled this situation. I think you actually have given our young people a really good model of what good decision making looks like. You listened to, you got a direction from above, you followed it, you investigated what was going on in your environment, you reevaluated, and you made it, and you updated your decision making based on the information you had, and you did the right thing. And I cannot fault you for, if anybody, I've heard some people wanting to fault you for why didn't we figure it out on Tuesday or what. This was a tough situation, and no matter what you would have done, it was hard. And I think you've handled it with immense integrity and with ethics, and I just applaud you for the way you've dealt with the situation.
Thanks, Tanya. Stephanie?
Thank you. You know the song Love Train? It's going through my head right now. I feel like we're just, we're all celebrating each other. It's clearly needed after the last couple of days. So I echo that. I do just want to ask a quick question about, so we made a broad sweeping announcement based on some information. And I do have to say, like, we might not feel like it's that bad, but you know what? We would be feeling bad if we went to the pumps and there was no gas. And so I appreciate the efforts we've made. I really do, because the efforts that school districts and other public entities were asked to make, I think, have made a difference. So that families can continue on. So I'm just wondering if there is an opportunity, if things lighten up, the trains are rolling, gas is coming. If we have the opportunity to if the ministry says, you don't need to do this, are we able to say, on Sunday, hey, sports practices could go on if they want? I am sympathetic to families who have written in. It's not just about provincials, but getting back into those things, that's really what kids dig. And I know this was a very hard decision, so don't think you made it lightly. I just wonder if there's an opportunity for us to be a little bit more flexible as we get more information and move forward.
Scott?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Of course, when we hear we can remove the restrictions, we'll remove them immediately. I understand as much as anyone. I mentioned some of these coaches have been teammates of mine and we've coached together. I've spent a lifetime playing sports and coaching, mostly hockey and soccer, but I appreciate the key role that sports has in social development, particularly mental health right now for kids who, for the better part of a couple of years, have been going through all of these mandates and restrictions and haven't been able to get together with their friends. These are really key things they need to be doing right now. And so no one appreciates that more than me. And while we set the restrictions until December 1st, I'm really hoping they come off much sooner than that. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions for you this evening, so with lots of thanks for today. That's great. Thank you very much. That moves the board into section 14.1 on the agenda, unfinished business. So during the Education Committee this month, we had discussed the strategic plan policy that was drafted by the policy committee, and there were some really thoughtful questions that were shared by trustees and committee members. And so the policy committee went away and we talked about each of those different points in some depth. And so I am once again elected to be their spokesperson and come back to you to share some information on that. So forgive me while I look at my other screen where my agenda is. I want to highlight some of those conversations that we had at that meeting. And so one of the things that we talked about was that we do really want to hear that public feedback from a 30-day consultation, and we want to see if it's reflected in what we're hearing, from trustees, because there's still room to make adjustments and changes to the draft policy, because it is just a draft at this point. And one of the things that we noted is that we really want to take this opportunity with this policy to utilize some of the places where we talk to our partner groups in less formal settings, such as liaison committee meetings. We want to be able to go to our leaders for learners who represent Indigenous partners and First Nations that we serve, where we can ask for their advice and thoughts on these types of policies to really inform that draft for the future decision making that boards will be looking to undertake. We did discuss data at length. I think it might be one of the most popular words that the board uses, because we want to be making good decisions that are based in the information that we know about students. And so we actually have, I'm sure you've noticed, brought back to you the same draft that we had last time. And that's because we want to get some more in-depth feedback through the consultation and through those other consultative pieces. And we've heard from staff quite a bit in the last few months since September about street level data and how do we use data in the school district. And so when thinking about strategic planning, the committee is recommending to the Board of Education that we move forward with this draft the way that it was drafted, with the 6 points within the process, talking about the different levels of data. And we see report cards and the Nanaimo Ladysmith literacy assessment as that sort of street level data that is captured in the other applicable data information. And we really do want to hear from other partner groups and from the public on whether we should expand that list and make it longer, or perhaps even shorten the list, and figure out what to do there, because it's, you know, we can make the list longer, but I think there's always going to be a point at which we might acknowledge that we've missed something or forgotten something, and so that final point on there where we're collecting all other applicable data, we believe that's a good catch-all for that street level information, the qualitative pieces that is important for a board to understand when coming up with a draft, or coming up with a strategic plan, which is the purpose of the policy, of course. And then finally, you know, we did have a thoughtful conversation around rights holders and a consultative process versus the conversation around consent. And what we've come to was a really interesting place, and I think it's really of value in what we believe in around the CA-ITSIS framework, and being in a reciprocal relationship with the Indigenous people who have been here since time immemorial. And so what we're hoping to do is to leave the draft as is, take it to Leaders for Learners, ensure that we're meeting their needs within the strategic planning process that's drafted in the policy, and continuing to work in that reciprocal relational way. We just really felt that was really important. And so we want to take this draft away and send it out to public consultation and continue to consult with our partners and come back to the board after receiving all of that feedback and let you know what we've heard through that process. So we are asking you this evening to circulate the notice of motion that's in your agenda this evening. And I'll stop there, and I'm open to any questions if there is any. Otherwise, I would suggest that somebody might want to move the motion. Okay. Trustee Higginson, sorry, Stephanie, did you want to read the motion, or would you like me to?
I can read it. That the Board of Education of School District Number 68 receive the draft strategic plan policy and circulate as a notice of motion for 30 days utilizing the consultation process per Board Governance Section 1, 2.7 Policy Development.
Thank you. And I see that it's been seconded by Tanya. Stephanie, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, I think as the person who was on the committee, you did a great job. I will say I'm going to continue to plug for the use of report card data. I'm going to continue to plug for it because I think it is one of the most valuable and unused sources of data that we have, and being able to mess with it will just further validate the professionalism that goes into the creation of those report cards, and perhaps help improve it when and where necessary. So I think it belongs in its own category beyond just in the other, particularly when FSA gets in its own category. And I know why, because it's part of the framework for enhancing student learning. But I think we have a real ability to use our own report card data in a really meaningful way. And I also want to say I look forward to the conversation with the board that's recommended in there about the district level or the district-wide literacy assessment and numeracy assessments, and the ability for those to become even more meaningful and useful than they may currently be. So with that, I will be quiet and look forward to the feedback that we receive from the public.
Great, thank you. Do any other trustees want to speak to the motion? I don't see anyone, so I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? With no one opposed, the motion carries unanimously. So we don't have any new business this evening. For information, there's a board's motions report this evening and trustee committee reports. It's also included in your agenda package. And so I'm just going to take a look at our question section. Ms. Matthews, were we provided with contact information?
No, we were not.
Okay. So according to board policy, you must provide your name and contact information in order for us to be able to respond appropriately to the questions that are posed in the chat. This evening, I'm going to decline to answer the questions that are in the chat as we have not been provided with appropriate contact information or the full name of the person asking the questions. So there are no questions for the minutes on this question period this evening, which takes us to an adjournment. And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. It's everybody's chance to adjourn. Moved by Jessica and seconded by Stephanie. And that is at 7:23 this evening. Thank you, everyone.